Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another Canadian Immigration live Q&A. I'm Mark Holthe, your host, but I am not alone today. I have a special guest that will be joining me more frequently here on Thursdays, and that is Alicia. How are you doing?
Hi, Mark. I'm well. And it occurs to me that I never do my little blurb, right? I never say, I'm Alicia Backenby-Harry. An immigration lawyer. I'm a yoga teacher, and I'm a immigration law teacher.
Absolutely. See, that's the thing. You guys are so used to hearing me blither on, and I keep telling you how awesome Alicia and Susan are, but I get a chance now to have them talk a little bit more about themselves. So that's fantastic. All right. Well, today I want to start off by apologizing to everyone for not having a live Q&A yesterday. I took the time and went out to, I took my son and my wife and I, as many of you know, he's getting ready to head down to Chile, hopefully, to serve a mission for our church. And so one of the things that we always do before our young missionaries head out is we go to the temple. And temple's a special little place that's a little bit more sacred, I guess you could say, than your regular congregation meeting house. And so it's because of the restrictions in the pandemic, it's really hard to be able to have time to get in, just because of the limited spots that they have available to go to the temple. And so we had time yesterday morning, and in my enthusiasm to do that, I forgot to let everybody know that the live Q&A wasn't going to happen. So I apologize for that. Those of you who are wondering, why didn't Mark do the live Q&A? So fortunately, you're in luck because Alicia is here to join me Thursday, and we're going to definitely try to do this more, aren't we, Alicia? Getting you on Thursdays, and it's going to be the kind of a team effort, I guess, is what we're going to do. So, and you guys can also see my camera is a little bit different today than it normally is. And there's been quite a few little things going on here for me. And one of them is the fact that my little capture card that I use to do this basically allow my nice 4K camera to shift around and to get a nice clear image. Well, that died on me. So I'm just using the HD on my little iMac here. So it works. It's all good. All right. Well, Alicia, I think there's a couple things that we wanted to do as we welcome people in. Big shout out to Ralph as always. Good to see him. And we've got Abhishek's in Langley. Make sure you guys post in the comments where you're tuning in from. We always love to see that. And yes, Donnie, we definitely are hoping that something's going to happen with Express Entry. And I guess maybe the first thing that I'll do is we give a few more shouts out to George here. He's over in Vancouver. And he says, happy Diwali to Mark and Alicia, and today it's my birthday too. Well, PSJ, happy birthday to you. We've got Fahad is over in Kelowna. Joe, good to see you. We've got Elikim, who's in PEI. Kartik, happy Diwali to you as well. Ralph is a fan. Yes, you are, my friend. Okay, Effie's over in Austria. Hello, Effie. Good to see you. And hello. We've got lots of people that are celebrating. So this is great. Lots of happy Diwalis. And people are already asking questions. Ankit, it's moving. We're not sure where it is. We'll try to address that. And then greetings from Ryan. Good to see you as well. Okay, well, what we'll do is we will just transition. And so I won't take a lot of time giving a ton of shout outs. Hold on to your questions for a little bit. And what we want to cover is just two little updates, I guess. Well, the first one, if we shift over here, Alicia, there we go. So I think you guys have been watching and wondering what's happening with the rounds of invitations. And I think it's fair to say, as we watch this steady stream of PNPs only draws every 2 weeks, that we're probably facing this for the rest of the year. And I think it's probably fair to say that. So those of you who are wondering, hey, am I going to be able to, see any ITAs for the FSW? I think it's probably unlikely. Those of you who are in Canada, with CEC wondering what's going to happen, it's also looking more and more like they're going to try to tackle all these backlogs first before they jump into the actual issuance of new ITAs. So this PNP we saw last week, October the 27th. Unlikely we'll see anything today. Maybe next week it'll probably go back to PNPs again. But I think we're kind of stuck with this, Alicia. What do you think?
Yeah, Mark, we were chatting about it just briefly here before we started the live, and I guess the good news is hopefully that means that they're processing the backlog of FSW applications that they've had in the queue since the pandemic. So, good news, bad news, they're not issuing new ones, but they're hopefully starting to land people who've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah. And that's, as you think about it, it is only fair with the people that have been, locked into these just obscene processing times, at least in modern terms, because we'll remember, going back, Alicia, to the old federal skilled worker program. Some countries, it was 6 or 7 years, before applicants could see their application getting processed. So, now when we're so used to 6-month processing to now have to wait a year and a half or 2 years, just seems so unconscionable, when in reality that was pretty fast processing times in the old world. But people, they have to plan their lives, right? They have to make decisions with their family. They have to determine when they're quitting their job or selling their home or liquidating their assets. And so it makes it really tough when you don't have a real solid understanding of when your application is going to be processed. So that's not surprising.
Yeah.
So you can see here the 27th, the 13th, the 29th, the 15th, September 14th, the 1st. We go all the way back to August the 19th when we had the last Canadian Experience class draw. And so we wanted to just highlight that a little bit. And, really, I think for Alicia and I, and those of you who are asking questions about when the express entry is going to start for Outlanders and for CEC, when we're going to start seeing ITAs, I think the short answer is that it's probably going to be, we're going to have a wait until the new year. Anything can happen, but I think that's probably what we're resigning ourselves to at this stage. Okay, let's take a look at just a couple other things. And Alicia, I know you wanted to address this, which is essentially this, the boarding and flights and the vaccinations and things like that. So why don't you tackle this, and you can share some insight to those who probably are not even aware of this.
Yeah, for sure. So the travel restriction exemptions is constantly a moving field, right? So things have been changing with the orders in council throughout the pandemic. What's happened now is that, so it's happened already, starting October 30th, people need to be vaccinated in order to board a flight or a train in Canada. And so there is a transition provision for some people, but only until the end of this month, until the end of November. So keep in mind, that there is a transition if you don't qualify as fully vaccinated. So if you're partially vaccinated or not vaccinated, then if you're showing a valid COVID-19 molecular test, and remember that's different than those rapid tests, and it's more expensive usually. So make sure that you've got that molecular test. It's got to be taken within 72 hours, and you can only use those tests to be able to board your flight or your train between now and the end of November 29, 2021. So after that, and I guess we'll go through, what does this say? What does the policy say? So this applies for people who are older than 12 years and 4 months of age. So if you have children who are under 12 years, 3 months, or under 12 years, 4 months of age, then they don't have to be fully vaccinated. They're allowed on the plane still. This may or may not change as, Canada may approve the Pfizer vaccine for kids who are younger, that 5 to 12 age group. We'll have to see how that plays out. But so far, if you're under 12, it's okay. But if you're over 12 months or 12 years and 4 months of age, you do have to prove your vaccination. So the accepted vaccines in Canada are only these 4, or the other names for the Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, or the Janssen, Johnson & Johnson. So those are the only 4 that will be accepted in Canada. So unfortunately, if you've got different ones, and I know this has happened for a few people I've had consultations with, especially from the Philippines, they said, we've been double vaccinated, but not with one of these four. Now what do we do? Do we go get more vaccines? And so talk with your doctors, talk with your medical professionals, and figure out what's the ramification for different types of vaccines if you've already been vaccinated with another foreign vaccine. But in Canada, you need one of those four to be able to get on an interprovincial flight or a rail, so traveling by train.
Yep. I think that probably from a high level, that's probably, I think we've covered the high points of this. But yeah, I think many people just didn't appreciate that even when you're looking at flying from within Canada, you're going to get caught by this, right? So
yeah.
Right.
And this applies to a bunch of people, right? So if you're coming in and you're landing as a federal skilled worker under express entry, if your application was approved and it was just kind of sitting there and waiting for the new meds to be finalized or getting that final confirmation of permanent residence, make sure that you're vaccinated to try to get to Canada, because if you land in one province and then you have to move provinces and it's now past November 29th, 2021, you're not going to be able to board that flight.
No.
So
yeah. So bottom line, be aware. All right, let's see what else we've got going on here, and we're just about at the stage where we're gonna take some questions here. All right, we've got Yun Chen is up in Edmonton. Goin is over in Mauritius, and let's see here. Manashresh says, Manis from Ottawa, you guys are doing a great job. Thanks. You're very, very welcome. Deepak's over in Montreal, and Asif is over in the UAE. And big shout out to you people who are, it's the middle of the night. So we're really pleased that you were able to connect, especially those that are tuning in on Facebook. Jennifer, good to see you. And individuals that are watching on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. And that's where it just shows Facebook user here. And that's how I can know that we're actually getting a pretty good reach. Now, I haven't seen anyone from Twitter yet. This live Q&A is also going out there. So we'll see how that all plays out. All right. So what I'd like you to do now is make sure when you post your questions, put a Q in front of it. And then that way we know that, that it's a question and not you just chatting with the other people in the group, as sometimes that's what we see. And then we've got Alvalin from Lima, Peru. Great to have you. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. So we'll start with Omar. He says, I've submitted my my application under CEC online outside Canada on July 1st. Is there any differences regarding the processing time between applying inside or outside Canada for CEC? Unfortunately, no, because the visas still have to get produced and issued by the overseas offices. And when you have that situation, you're at the mercy of whatever backlogs they have, which include all of the FSWs. And it also factors in when you have dependents, if you're in Canada as a CEC. So if you have accompanying dependents that also have to have visas issued, that can stall things. So absolutely, it's going to take a little bit of time. All right. Tanzim, hello from Bangladesh. And we've got someone else in the Express Entry Law group from Pakistan. Hello. Okay. Okay. Tarima is asking for an update on the backlog of FSWs 2019. So I think you guys probably know, and let me just share something with you here, share the web, and I'm going to pull up the YouTube channel, and you'll see here, then you guys need to check this out. So just a shout out to the previous ones that I did. One on misrep with Alicia. You guys have to watch this if you haven't. Actually, let me just pull up this one instead here. There we go. You can see that I've got a little bit of news about the new minister. In the interview I did with a judge trapped in Kabul with Robert, TRPR, the minister might be doing some new stuff. But in here, I also talked about FSW Outland, this one right here. And passport requests are now being issued. And you can see here, I say coming your way to India as well. And so I know a lot of you are, a lot of the backlog is in India and in that territory. So this particular client was located in the US as a principal applicant, but the dependent was in India. And that is a clear indication that things are moving forward. So they filed their application the end of December. So Tarima, I think, at least when I look at it, there's going to be a fairly decent chance that you should be hearing something within, just a very short period of time. We can never know for certain what immigration's going to be doing, and you guys, you go to those websites, you track, the ones that are specifically designed to, for people to report where they're at in their processes. Those are probably the best and most accurate locations you can get for up to date, at least anecdotal data of where things are happening. But we are starting to see things move. So I don't know, Alicia, if you have any thoughts on that, but there's a lot of uncertainty when we're trying to predict these things.
Yeah, and the thing that I normally tell people to take a look at is the expiry date on their passports and the dependents' passports. So if you've got kids and everybody had passports issued at different times, make sure that your passport is valid for a significant period of time. If it's going to be expiring really soon, take a look at getting that process started to try to get the new passport and then update immigration with your new passport.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's see here. Next is a question that maybe, Alicia, you can tackle this one too. So I know we've had some discussions about this in the past, but so basically, Abhishek says that they applied for PR under CEC class. However, since his wife had received her spousal visa on an Indian passport, they didn't submit the Portuguese passport, which he holds. What is the remedy?
And so this is a cautionary tale, right? This is getting back to the misrep talk we had last week for Halloween. But so there is case law where somebody had multiple citizenships. And in this case, it's not clear. Like, I don't know when you said you didn't submit the Portuguese passport, whether
Yeah.
you listed it as
Yes,
she
that's the
does have
question.
citizenship. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the question is, did you properly list that even though you're submitting the Indian passport or using that as your identity document, did you also acknowledge that she is a citizen of Portugal and then clearly check that box off and list that as another citizenship in the application? Because the risk is if you haven't listed that as another citizenship, then immigration might not be able to do their proper background and security clearances. And if they're precluded from a line of inquiry, that can be misrepresentation. And so there's a difference between whether you had to submit that identity document or a copy of that identity document, because if immigration just asks for a valid passport, you can submit one of the valid passports you have. But on the application forms themselves, you have to make sure that you've properly declared that she is also a citizen of Portugal.
Yep. All right. Okay. And Kita, I'll pull yours up here as well. She says, any hope for FSW? I think not until the new year, if that's the direction that you're looking. Okay. Amitabh, good to see you from India here. All right. Homam says, I applied for PR. My spouse's work permit expired and applied for a work permit again and restoration of status. Is she considered as implied status while waiting for PR? And maybe I can jump in on this one, Alicia. So I think what we're seeing here, I'm assuming, is that you guys forgot to extend the work permit before it expired. And the whole concept of implied status, or what they call maintained status, exists when you submit an application before your current or the immediately preceding work permit expired. If you submitted it before, then it's implied status or maintained status. And Alicia, what is the significance of that versus, just being able to restore in the context of work authorization?
Yeah, so the big no-no here is continuing to work without authorization until you actually get an approval, if you do get an approval, on that restoration plus the new work permit application. So if you have implied status, or what is now called maintained status, meaning that you submitted that extension application before the old document expired. If you did that, then you have the ability to continue working until you get a decision from immigration. However, if you forgot and you didn't submit that application in time, if you submitted it after the expiry of that original document, then now you're looking at restoration, which you can do within 90 days of losing your status, but you can't continue to work because you don't have any current valid work authorization. You can only start working if that restoration and the new work permit gets approved.
And that's the big distinction. And I'll be honest, Alicia, I have many consults with people who receive just bad advice from whoever they're seeking it from. That they say, sure, we'll just file a restoration application, no problem. But then say nothing about whether or not the person can work, so they just keep working. And absolutely, that's most definitely unauthorized. So that's the situation there for you, Homam. Okay, let's see who we have next here. Let's pull up Anis, and he says, "Hi sir, I'm having a skilled provisional visa subclass 49 refusal of in Australia 4 years ago." Okay, so prior visa refusal, not sure exactly what that is, but in Australia, or I think what they're asking is, am I or may I be eligible for Canada immigration? And this is something we've also talked about quite a bit in the past in a number of videos. But the reality is, just because you had a visa refused from another country doesn't necessarily make you inadmissible to Canada. And more often than not, it doesn't. What you run into a problem with is if you don't disclose that. And once again, that takes us back, Alicia, to our the live stream that we did on misrepresentation for Halloween. And you guys have to watch that if you haven't. Go back and watch that because it's all focused on misrepresentation. And we covered a lot of territory there. But what's more damaging in a visa refusal situation is not disclosing it than disclosing it. Any additional thoughts?
Yeah, and in our misrep video, we talked about exactly where they asked that question and then making sure that you check yes in your background declarations and provide the details, right? Like maybe you know why they refused you. Maybe it's something that you can explain about what happened. But the key thing is making sure that you do disclose that there was that refusal.
Yep, exactly. Okay, Tejinder says, TRPR going to open? Well, let's flip back here to, once again, a video that I did, and you can see it right here. TRPR pathway may expand, says minister. And I wanted to direct you guys back to that to watch it, because in that video, one of the things that I talked about was the fact that, yes, there's been rumblings that the TRPR program will open up again, but personally, I didn't see any indication that it would apply for international graduates. Instead, what they seemed to be looking at was finding ways potentially to transition more individuals that might be here on with a refugee claim pending, or individuals that maybe wanted a little bit more time or needed more time because the healthcare worker stream had not yet been filled, the essential worker category. And so those discussions, the minister was conceding, at least our old minister, Mendocino. Now we have Minister Fraser, which once again, go check out the video that I did on Minister Fraser. And I also want to give a shout out, and I don't usually do this, to CIC News, who did a really good piece on the new minister and a little bit of background to help us get to know him a little bit better. And I've noticed that over the last while, Campbell Cohen firm has been turning out some pretty good content on the CIC News. It's content that's not just purely directed to encourage you to hire them as your lawyer, but information that's actually really beneficial. So shout out to them. Okay, let's see what we've got next here. So Tarima, we've talked about the Outland applications. Okay, let's see here. So we've covered Anis. Okay, let's get to Harini here. So applied for TR to PR stream. Last update, August the 19th for PCC. Can my RCMP fingerprints for Ethiopian police clearance can be considered biometric? Wow. Let me see if I can decipher this. This is kind of code here. Okay, TR to PR pathway, probably essential worker. Okay, so last update was maybe to request a police certificate, August the 19th. Can the RCMP fingerprints maybe be used for the Ethiopian police certificate? Can be considered biometric. So you know what, Harini? This is something that I'm going to, let's see if we've got this. Oh, I don't have it turned on here. Oh, you can hear just the end of it. I'm going to ring the bell and I'm going to direct you right back here to our website. And I'm going to tell you to go over here and just click on, let's see if we can see it here. It looks like I've got to move my page around here. Bear with me. Oh, got lots down there. Let's bump this up so that everybody can see. There it is. I had to try to find the bottom here. It's a little bit of a work in progress when we're trying to queue up all this so it's all nice and pretty when you guys are looking at it. Okay, let's see. We can probably leave it right there. Okay, so down here you can click on Speak to a Lawyer, and we recommend that you book a consult. And Alicia's there first for a reason. But yeah, we recommend that you do that because I think we'll need a little bit more information as to exactly what the requirements are and what the Ethiopian police certificate is looking for. I'm assuming that they're requiring fingerprints, and I'm assuming that fingerprints. If the question is, can I use ones that I've obtained from the RCMP and then send them over there? That's something that probably I'd recommend you book a consult with. I don't know if you have any insight on this, Alicia.
Well, I'm just wondering, maybe Hareen is asking, could the fingerprinting be considered to be your biometrics? And if that's the question, then biometrics is a separate
thing.
A whole separate thing. So immigration will send a specific biometrics instruction letter. You've got to go to one of the biometrics centers to do that, and they will do different sets of fingerprints, which is separate and apart from anything that you would have done for police certificates.
Okay. Sometimes it's a little bit of a mystery for us when people are posting questions. Mohammed, we can't say exactly. I think I've already answered this FSW one about your AOR is January. Well, like I said in that last video, the client that I had, the AOR was the end of December. So I think we're getting close for you. Christiana, TRPR pathway. I think we covered that as well. I don't think it's going to extend for international grads, but it could for, other streams of essential workers and those who are in the refugee process potentially.
But keep in mind, too, guys, tomorrow's the last day, right?
Yeah.
If you're still under the TRPR, if you're looking at finalizing your application, it ends tomorrow under the current rules.
Good. Thank you for reminding me, Alicia. Okay. All right. Okay. So Kartik says, how to show funds for second year studies apart from bank statement when asked at a port of entry. Well, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen anyone be asked for proof of second year studies at a port of entry. I guess it's always possible. Ultimately, you would have been applying for your study permit from outside of Canada, and you're going to bring the funds that you have. But yeah, I don't know, Alicia, if you have any additional insight on this. Bank statements are usually what we provide. So
yeah. So there is some policy guidance on this, Mark. It's on the study permits assessing the application, and I'll send you the link here.
Sure.
But immigration normally is only looking at that first year. And so it's unusual for them to look at the next year unless they think that you're not going to be able to meet those financial obligations. So I've sent the link to Mark, and we're getting that up for you in a minute. But yeah, here we go. So study permits assessing the application. This is kind of program delivery instructions that immigration uses internally. And if you go down there, they've got a completeness check, they've got, what has to be included in your application, and then they've got reviewing documentation. So if you keep scrolling down, there's proof of identity, and underneath that, there's financial sufficiency. There we go. So here's where their policy guidance comes from. Students are required to demonstrate financial sufficiency for only the first year of studies, regardless of the duration of the course or program of studies in which they're enrolled. So there you go. Usually they're only looking at that first year, even if it's a 4-year degree program, to satisfy the financial requirements. It does say officers should be satisfied, however, that the probability of funding for future years does exist. So in that case, if you're not working and you're relying on your parents for funding, then proving that your parents are employed, or you've got scholarships, or you have some other way to support your studies, that there's the probability of future funding. So technically they're only looking at the first year. However, probability of funding for future years is a consideration. And then they look at, what they're looking at for assessing the adequacy of financial resources. They want to know where the money has come from. They kind of have a high risk versus low risk. Where do the funds originate from? How reliable would it be that people are going to be able to pay for their education? And they've got some more details in here, which is helpful to look at. The other thing that they talk about is making sure that if your parents have gifted you the money, that you properly have a gift deed, and you can show that your parents are giving you that money. It's not a loan. There's no repayment or interest due, and that it's fully a gift. And normally you should get that properly notarized in your country of origin.
Yeah.
There are different rules for Quebec as well.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Great answer. Okay. See, it's not just the answer here, you guys, but it's actually source documents that you can refer back to. So that's how you do an immigration Q&A. Okay. Okay. And this is something, let's see, who is this? Goen. So Goen is asking questions about PNP, Nova Scotia French, AOR, October 2020, no news. When you think I may hear something? This is probably the question I think that Alicia and I get more than anything else. And I can tell you that when we hear rumblings of things moving forward, we share it. And obviously, I will refer you guys back to those, those websites, and there's a number out there that track where things are at. Even within our TRPR Pathway Facebook group, we created a tracking sheet in there so that people could get a general idea as to when they submitted, when they could likely expect movement and ultimate PR. So I think to a large extent, when it comes to whether it's PNPs or express entry or TR-to-PR pathway, it's a lot of speculation, you guys. And so I don't think we can give you a real accurate, when you might hear something. But one thing we do know, as we've looked at the rounds of invitations for express entry, the fact they haven't been issuing those to large numbers of people, they're maintaining their obligations with the various provinces to continue to extend invitations. But ultimately, I think they're being responsible. It's not great for people who are waiting, who are seeing their human capital start to drop. But I think for people who have legitimately been in the queue and been held, back with so much uncertainty in their lives and their future goals and plans because of the travel restrictions, because of the ceasing of almost all processing of overseas paper applications through the consulates, back through the worst times of the pandemic. I think the government owes them a right to place them as a priority. So hopefully they can zip through these as quick as possible and then start to, to get to the new applicants. But yeah, I don't know if we have any real timelines that we could share other than what we've talked about already. Okay, let's see who's next. And Kita, I'm going to ring the bell and direct you right back to our firm website to book a consult here, because in every case, the reality is when we're giving any advice, specific stuff like this, should I wait for FSW or apply? There's a whole bunch more factors that we need to look at, isn't there, Alicia?
Absolutely.
Okay. Here's a good one. So what do you think about this one, Alicia? I submitted my application, but my local address outside Canada has changed. Do you need to update in a web form?
So one of the things that you have to do when you submit your application is you've got to sign off at the bottom, and it specifically says in there that you know that you have an obligation to update immigration when relevant aspects of your application change. So yeah, if you have a different address, a different residential address, and that's changed, then you do need to update it in the application. And if there's no way to do so in your application itself, then the web form is really your only option.
Exactly. All right. So Clemens says, I've got a closed work permit for 2 years. When can I apply for permanent residence? Ding. Head on over and book a consult, and we can assess all the options that are available. clearly there's way more that we would need, Clement, in order to give you that specific legal advice. So try to keep your questions focused on general things that apply to everybody. And if you do have a specific question like that, the best thing in the world is to slide over and book a consult with us, and we can really help you to set up a plan and a pathway forward and know what your options are and provide you with legal advice on the best way of moving forward. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is an issue that we're facing a lot of, Alicia. So I try to attach a document to my application using a web form. I tried 2 times so far, no luck. Should I keep sending web forms? Is there any other way to attach a new document other than a web form? So all across the whole network of portals, it has been one constant state of challenge, and it's seeped into even other areas like the foreign worker program through ESDC. Even their system was experiencing problems. The employer portal with the International Mobility Program was experiencing problems. And we've talked a lot about this, the fact that generally speaking, this whole process is just a product of outdated systems that are becoming just completely overtaxed. So think of it like your hard drive that's about 99% full capacity. And once it hits that level, or even your phone, you've taken so many pictures and videos that the space on your phone is completely full, and then it starts to crash and freeze. And that is exactly what's happening with the portals. And so now they're trying to transition those portals to new platforms. And when in the process of doing that, all kinds of problems have arisen. People with inability to link applications, trying to update via web form and not getting any confirmation or anything like that. And then on top of it, the limited resources and how the government has chosen to apply those resources. In other words, the officers. Yeah, first, obviously, the pandemic was a reason why things slowed down. Then they tacked on top of it the Afghan crisis. And I'll be honest, it has created just a real horrible situation for everyone. So as far as keep sending web forms, Asan, I don't know if you're actually getting that little confirmation window that says confirmation of submission, and it's just the email notification back saying, yeah, we've got it and we've applied it to your file. Yeah, I wouldn't keep sending web forms if your web form was actually successfully uploaded and you received that confirmation. If the web form wasn't working and you were trying to do it and it just wouldn't allow you to submit it, well then, yeah, you're going to keep trying to do that. But understand, I have another client that we submitted a response to a procedural fairness letter within their MyCIC portal, and it shows that it was submitted, but there is a section where it transitions to being received, and it's just stuck in that spot. So we know we've done everything that we need to do on our end, but it's the government's end that's the problem on the other side that's just delayed and updating or sending the automated notifications, and everything's drug on. So
a couple things I'd add to that is keep in mind that there's a megabyte limit in what you can upload via web form. And some people don't realize you can't upload multiple documents. So if you're going to be uploading a document, you either have to do multiple web forms if you've got 4 or 5 documents, or you've got to be able to combine your PDFs and reduce your file size so it's under 4 megabytes in size. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing that I'd say is screenshot, screenshot, screenshot. So if you have actually done this and gone through the process and you've gotten advanced to the stage where it says, okay, we've accepted it, take a screenshot of that, make sure you've got the date so that you can prove what day it was that you actually submitted. Because if Mark, it's right that maybe they submitted it, but it's just timing out or it's not doing that confirmation email, then at least you've got some proof of what you did. If you haven't submitted it, or if it hasn't accepted your submission, then you have to keep trying because you have an obligation to tell immigration what's changed on your file.
Yeah. All right. So here is this is a question that kind of no one has asked it specifically in this way, but I had a consult just before we went live, Alicia, with someone else who's kind of in this situation, asking about processing times for PNP supported express entry. And so this individual in the Express Entry Law private Facebook group says, why are they only now issuing passport requests for PNP outland applicants? And maybe I should change the emphasis on that sentence. Why are they only now issuing PPRs for PNP. This means only CIO office only is working. What about Ottawa? Why aren't they finalizing FSW applications? Well, the individual in the video that I did from December was a pure Outlander. So he was not a PNP. And so I know that they are processing. In terms of this groundswell of thought that people are now pushing out that they're not doing pure Outlanders, but only PNP. I know that there are exceptions to those. And sometimes some visa offices tend to dominate, obviously India and the ones that have large volumes of applications. And people start to see things because it's only what people are reporting that they see. And then they start to draw conclusions. And so the application for, I had a client on the spousal side, and I'll give this just as an example, who received their instructions, and they are American citizens, and the spouse is a dual citizen Canadian, and they're planning on returning back to Canada when the spousal sponsorship has been completed. But their application was being processed in Manila. So they moved it out there to be processed. So they're spreading things around across the network. And yes, the federal government has obligations to the provincial nominee programs to make sure that the people that are being nominated are going through in a fashion that meets the actual labor needs of that province. So if they nominate someone, it means because they need that person now. Generally speaking, they're driven by labor demands within those provinces. And so that is a factor why they prioritize PNPs. But ultimately, as far as not processing, I know they are. It just depends on the country and the world, but they are processing outland applications. So it's just, I know for some of you, especially in the larger visa offices, and I keep coming back to India. There's just massive backlogs, and with the Delta variant and the inability to process lots of applications because of working with a skeleton crew in those visa offices, that's what's caused all of this to kind of surface. Okay. And see, this is another one, Alicia. It's been 2 weeks. Any PPR has been issued for Nepali applicant. Why? So I think what's happening is people are going onto these sites and they're not seeing any reports of anyone getting their, any movement with the applications. This is the neat thing about the internet, because individuals can create their own statistical data in real time as to where things are happening. And that's why, it's really, really neat how people have access to these resources where years ago, it would just be this black hole and you wouldn't know anything. And then for us immigration lawyers, well, we would talk to our fellow colleagues across the country. Hey, has anyone seen where these things are at? Has anyone had any applications processed from Nepal? And then we'd get people that say, oh yeah, my last one was this, or no, I haven't heard anything, since this time. And then we, it's by committee. You kind of collectively put your experiences together to try to figure out what's really happening. And I really wish IRCC would be more transparent with this, but yeah, we haven't seen, we don't have enough experience, I don't think, Alicia, with Nepal to really know or be able to answer that question. I think that's the case, right?
I would agree. I haven't had any Nepalese
Yes.
applicants recently, so.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at this one. I think this is one that's great for you, Alicia. So I'm wondering about counting the length of time for the postgrad work permit from January 2022 onwards. My course will be online for winter term 2022. In Canada, will my winter term count for the postgrad work permit?
Okay, so
from counting January 2022 onward.
So they haven't started yet, so they're going to be starting their program, I assume.
It looks like it.
The course will be online for the winter term 2022. So they're doing a course that's probably a year, I guess, in length from January. They haven't started yet until winter of 2022. And already in Canada, not sure if they're transitioning from a different course, I guess, is the question.
Yeah. Let's assume not for this purposes.
Yeah, so if you're doing a 1-year course, assuming that you're starting it in January, the winter term is going to be online. but I'm not sure about the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Um,
This
so
might be
if
a
that,
consult.
yeah,
Yeah.
it might be a consult. Um, there is some interpretation if you go onto IRCC's website about calculating the term of your postgrad work permit. There were some modifications because of COVID, because of online programming, because the normal rule is that fully online courses don't count towards your postgrad work permit calculation of time. However, because of COVID, they had relaxed that rule, but only up until a certain period of time. So you could count that for a postgrad work permit, but only if it was because of COVID and the school had gone online during that period.
Yep.
They did also say for 50% of the studies, normally if it's more than 50% of the studies, if it's online, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So that's
Out
the
of
normal
luck.
rule.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Oh, this is a painful one. Oh, I don't even want to pull this one up, Alicia. Okay. Applied for CEC months ago. Unfortunately, in the rush of uploading documents, we submitted the wrong ECA and our application was marked as incomplete. Is there any chance to get the file reconsidered?
Oh. So, I mean, you can try. You can try to ask for reconsideration, but honestly, immigration is probably not even going to respond. Depending on when you got that refusal or marked as incomplete, you might even not have the ability to ask for a judicial review if the time has passed. Um, this is just really, really brutal, and this is why Mark does everything he can to try to inform people about how detail oriented, how perfect you've got to be in every single aspect of your express entry application. Because unfortunately, if you upload any wrong document, immigration basically says, too bad, you've got to restart from the beginning.
Yeah. This is why we completely shifted our immigration model, you guys. I don't know if there's too many firms that do what we do. And this is why we created the collaborative review model, was for this exact reason. You know, you may miss something, right? Kelly, you might miss something. You in your haste to submit an application, you could miss something. And I'll be honest, representatives are not perfect either, especially when a lawyer or a consultant has support staff that's working primarily with you as a client. Things can get missed. But when we work together, and the collaborative review model is all about working together on an application to review it thoroughly together, you might miss something or we may miss something, but it is really, really hard to miss something when you've got two people looking at the same thing and going through it meticulously. And with our firm, one of the things that we really, that we really pride ourselves on is that you work directly with us. When you retain us, you work directly with Alicia, and you work directly with myself, and you work directly with Susan. So there's no middle person. And we teach you everything that you need to know in the course of doing our collaborative reviews. And so, Kelly, it breaks my heart because it's not the big things that cause express entry applications to be refused. No, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes people get their knock code wrong, right? Sometimes they misunderstand what a job offer is and assume they've got 50 more points than they really do. But generally, it's the small little things. And those little tiny things are the ones that can cause, well, a person's dream of immigrating to Canada to be gone forever. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, Alicia, but
Yeah, I mean, you can
yeah.
always ask for reconsideration. You can always try. There's no harm in trying, but
Mm-hmm.
the likely response is going to be crickets. It's going to be you don't get any response back from immigration. If they do respond, they might just say to reapply, but because there's no new CEC draws, it's not so easy to reapply if you've got temporary status that's expiring.
Exactly. Okay. Elodie says, does IRCC process PNP same way as FSW? Is it only after biometrics that files are looked at by IRCC? So understand that to a large extent, wherever possible, Elodie, IRCC most definitely automates the process. So even the request for biometrics is triggered very frequently. And it's interesting because I've never really asked IRCC if there's someone clicking a button. to generate the biometric request letter. But one thing we do know is that they're using augmented, assessment or artificial intelligence to AI to help with the processing of applications. And, the extent to which it's embedded within the express entry process, we're still digging to try to find out. I need to get Mario Bellissimo on to talk about the latest, his latest views on this. That actually makes that would actually be really good to get him on. He's really focused a lot on this. And so ultimately how they treat PNP and FSW, understand it depends upon what stream you're going through. The PNPs have a lot of different programs. Some are paper-based or directed to the new PR portal, or others are parts of express entry streams where they go through the express entry process. And once a PNP is extended a nomination through the express entry streams, you're pretty much back right into the process like other candidates who receive their invitations to apply, and the files roll that way. So I'm not aware of any significant difference in how biometrics are issued with a PNP versus an FSW. Maybe there's something inside the system that allows them to toggle on or off. Okay, don't issue biometric letters for any FSW yet. Just issue them for PNP. Maybe that's the case. For sure, the technology is there to allow them to be able to do it. You would assume that was the case, but I'm not aware of any specifics, Alicia, that I could share.
No.
Okay, Yusuf, like Alicia pointed out, TR2PR is extending, and I haven't heard anything. So, we'll watch the news. We'll see, there's a good chance if there is an announcement, it'll happen today. I don't know if anyone has seen anything. I haven't personally. It still looks to me like let's go take a look. Why don't we do that? Let's go take a look and see if there's been any changes. So TR to PR pathway, we'll pull this up. We'll go right to the page and we'll just see. So still says it's going to close November the 5th. And the big discussion, like we've talked about, and there's a big warning. So I didn't see that's a new one. That hasn't popped up here before, has it, guys? So you go down here and you can see with the streams, the big question is, because there's only 6,633 applications for the healthcare category A, will they extend it to allow for this 20,000 to be filled? And we know that there's been over 47,000 applicants through the international graduate stream that were able to sneak in because of the mad flurry that we all know was going to happen. And so will they extend it past this? Well, so far, we haven't seen any change. And if we scroll down here, this hasn't been updated since October 29th. So about five days ago, they updated it. And I imagine the update was probably to put that little pop-up notification saying, don't bother submitting if you're on November the 6th, because I think, that might have been something that people tried to do before and it didn't work out so well for them.
So the other thing I want to add to that, Mark, is be really, really careful about UTC time. Okay, so when they say November 5th, 2021 is your deadline, it doesn't mean that that's before midnight in whatever jurisdiction or time zone you're in. Immigration uses universal time. And so if you're in Alberta, like we are, then subtract about 6 hours from that deadline at least, or give yourself way more time than you think you need, because it does take a while to go through that portal to properly upload everything in your application. And you don't want to be cutting it too close, because once it rolls over to midnight UTC time, then it's done.
Yeah. And your ability to submit will just be gone. It'll disappear. Okay. All right. Let's answer a couple more questions and then we will wrap up. Now, some of you, I've seen that the questions are being posted multiple times. And I think the reality is you may have missed, but I may have answered your question. So if you've posted multiple times and you just see me passing through it, that's probably what's happened. Okay. Let's just see here. I'm going to go down and I'm just going to pick up one question here. Okay. All right. So, okay. Harsha says, applied for TR to PR international grad stream. I uploaded the program completion letter and transcripts. I didn't upload the program certificate. I heard they're rejecting for this. Okay. So this one is an interesting aspect. Remember, I did the case on a rejected CEC application where it went to federal court and it was overturned because of the specific instructions in the express entry, the little information buttons on the actual document checklist, where it says that a diploma or a degree was an example of possible documents. Now, when it comes to the TR-to-PR pathway, we also know that that they are being more flexible than they are with express entry. But when you have massive backlogs and officers are now under the gun to make sure that they're meeting quotas and pumping applications out, they can check off the box for a processed application with an approval or a refusal. And it's a lot faster to refuse an application than it is to process it to conclusion. So if an officer's now looking for ways to clear up this massive backlog they have, well, you have to take into consideration that, well, maybe some of them will be showing less kindness and generosity in what they'll allow and what they won't. TR-to-PR is also challenging because there isn't a meaningful way to upload anything through, say, the web form. And they've been trying to tell people not to upload through that. So, but not having this certificate, obviously that could be an issue. And remember, you hear everything online. So everybody's had different experiences and every officer is different. So it's hard to say, Harsha. Alicia, any thoughts on that one?
I mean, hopefully they would, as long as you have that program completion letter and the official transcripts, and you can prove that you've completed that international grad category and it falls within the eligibility parameters for what type of schooling it was, the length of the program, etc. Hopefully they would accept that alternative proof. But yeah, the case that was Thompson, where it was an express entry application. And in that case, they did reject because the certificate itself or the diploma or degree itself wasn't actually uploaded. And they took that to the federal court. The federal court actually said, you know what? Yeah, that's not fair for immigration to be saying that it's an incomplete application because they didn't specifically say that you have to upload that program certificate. However, we don't know what'll happen with the TR-to-PR pathway interpretation by officers, but hopefully it will be viewed more compassionately because it is technically under the Section 25 humanitarian and compassionate jurisdiction.
I'm just looking here. When that mad rush happened with these applications, and lots of people were wondering what they would need to prove that they actually completed their credential. I'm just trying to remember here. I was just doing a quick little search while we were talking, education, and I thought there was some, I can't find it now, but a policy that came out, and I'm trying to remember. I think the policy related to, maybe it wasn't education that I'm thinking of. I'll just flip my screen around here. So obviously the first thing you're going to do is go to the program delivery instructions and any instructions to officers. And clearly when you go through the guide and you look at the guide and you're trying to see whether or not you need to include something, you need to follow whatever it says explicitly. Everything in your power, you try to make sure that you can prove it. This talks about what the requirements are, and I didn't see anything specifically addressing, whether or not they would accept one thing over another. So it says that you must have been issued these degree, diploma, certificates, but it doesn't say, at least this particular instruction here. This is just another, it's kind of like the completeness check that you guys have seen for express entry. In a way, that's what this particular site is trying to show. But unfortunately, there isn't any clear instruction. So you just have to, wherever opportunities arise, try to upload it as at the earliest opportunity you can. And then, there's not much more that you can do in those circumstances. Okay, let's see here. I think with everything that we have going on, I think, Alicia, we're into overtime now, so maybe we'll wrap it up there. I think we've covered everything. Let's see here if there's any other last ones. Let's see here. This is Kelly indicated here. She says that I uploaded the wrong ACA, and that and I think we covered this to some extent, but she sent the web form with the proper file. Yeah. And so she took the step to do that, to try to see if, if it could be resurrected. But yeah, I'll be honest, Kelly, very, very unlikely that they're going to be willing to do that. Okay, let's see who else. What is the best method for a 40-year-old professional couple, American citizens, to immigrate to Canada? I know. Alicia, do you know what it is? The best method is to slide over here and book a consult with us. Click on Speak to a Lawyer, and let's go through it in detail. And then we can examine exactly what the possibilities are and be able to give you advice and direction. But in fairness, when you are a citizen of the United States and you're older, it becomes a lot difficult, regardless of what country you're in, when you're losing all those age points to qualify through express entry. So often we will look at work. And if it's an American citizen, depending upon, you say you're a professional couple, well, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, the old NAFTA, renamed CUSMA, does have a number of occupations, professions that only require an offer of employment from a Canadian employer. Now, what is that? It means it doesn't require them to show there's no Canadian or permanent resident to the job. Really, you're showing that you have the credentials for that profession, that experience, and the company does need to register a job offer or an offer of employment within the International Mobility Program and the employer portal. But aside from that, it's a pretty straightforward process. So if you have professionals, often that's the first thing we look at. Does the company you're working for have a subsidiary in Canada? So we're really focused on work permits. That's really where we target it when we have older applicants, because some people think, oh, well, I'll just apply to go to school. And yes, that is possible if it's legitimate to say, now I'm looking to do a master's in engineering, and I've been practicing as an engineer in the US. Yes. But for us, if there's a work permit option, that's generally where we will point to. So, Dixania, that's what I recommend you do is book a consult, and there's a link in the description below. Anything else, Alicia, that you'd add in as just general advice to any professional out there that's a little older?
Learn French.
Wow, that deserves this. There we go. Absolutely. That is going to be the great wild card. I think Holthe Immigration Law needs to have a separate division that's a French language study, because wow, if you're looking to immigrate to Canada, that is the new game changer is French. And if you are a little bit older, or maybe your education isn't quite as high, well, even that, it's tough, but French really can give you up to 50 or even more points towards that elusive invitation to apply.
And the other thing is that it increases your chances for a work permit under Mobilité Francophone. So that's another option too.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up with that. Thank you everybody for joining us today. This is a pretty good one. I like this one. We'll turn on our goodbye music. As always, why do we do this, Alicia? Why the heck do we get on here and do this? Now, I don't know, I've probably been doing this for about 4 years, but why do we really do this? What's your thought?
I think I've seen people's lives really derailed because they didn't have key information that they needed about immigration. And it's damaging to their families, it's damaging to their futures, and being informed and taking the time to really learn about this and learn about what's that information, that legal information that you're missing that's absolutely essential to your application, makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we will see you again next Wednesday. I will be back with another Q&A, and we will also definitely start doing this more frequently on Thursdays with Alicia. All right. So thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone else that has been that's been watching. We appreciate it, and this wouldn't be possible without all of you. Take care, everyone.